Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Roger Gilbert. I'm in Vienna, Austria, attending dsm-firmenich's Aqua Days 2023. And it's great to be here. We're on the last day of the show, and I'm reporting for International Aquafeed and Milling and Grain Magazine. But I'm pleased to say I'm in the company of Wolfgang Harten, and Wolfgang Harten is the COO, or General Manager, of Almar out of Ecuador. And it's an exciting company. Welcome, Wolfgang.
Thank you very much, Roger. Pleasure meeting you.
Yes. Can you tell me a little bit about your company, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a lot to tell. It's actually a very exciting company. So for context, and as you probably know, Ecuador today is either the first or the second largest producer of Vannamei Shrimp in the world, depending on the expert, right? China could be first or second. Now, within Ecuador, we're actually the second largest producer. This year, we will be producing a total of 130,000 tons in the year, which is an important number. Almar is, I would say, quite a special company. We are very productive, with around 2% of the farmable land in Ecuador. We represent around 10% of the production, which makes us quite productive, right? And the reason we are that productive really is that we spend a lot in R&D. We have done a lot of efforts to sort of do things differently in the industry. For example, we have 100% of our ponds are recirculation. We were one of the very early adopters of automatic feeders with hydrophones. 100% of our ponds are fed with automatic feeders. Then another big effort was our efforts to electrification.
Okay.
And this is pretty important. First of all, we do not electrify for electrification's sake, right? We do it because it allows you to automate. So for example, using sensors, you can know or see that the oxygen levels are going down, and then the aerators can turn on automatically. But it also has a huge impact in sustainability, because you are effectively substituting fuel oil, diesel, for the aerators with grid-powered or electric aerators. Okay. And what is interesting here is that in Ecuador, the grid is the source of the energy for the national grid is 65% hydro, but when you talk about generation, it's 85% hydro. So not only do you substitute away from diesel towards electricity, but also it's a pretty clean energy.
Yeah, yeah. And what is driving sustainability, do you think?
There are several things. So I would say I could answer in two stages, right? Number one, I joined Almar 3 years ago, more or less, and I found that Almar has sustainability in its ADN. In fact, our local marketing agency in Ecuador, when we started talking to them around 2 years ago, they conducted a workshop. And I was quite new. And one thing that I really liked is that everybody was saying that the why we're here, the why of Almar, is really to leave a better future for the next generation, to make a difference in the country, to make a difference in the world. Everybody was talking about taking care of the oceans, taking care of the beaches. There were several divers among the executives in Almar. So it is definitely something that is in the ADN of the executives, right? So we believe that that's just the right way to do business, right? To be respectful with the ecosystem. Now, what really triggered what is happening now to us has to do with our loan from the FMO, the Dutch Development Bank. They provided us with a loan to build our processing plant. I didn't mention before, but historically we have been, a family-owned and run company, founded in 1981. but we have been historically producers of shrimp, only producers, selling to local processing plants who they would do the exports, right? But we decided a couple of years ago that we had to integrate because our volume is so large that it's time for us to integrate and to integrate forward because we have a hatchery, Biogemar, but to integrate forward with a processing plant, right? So we started constructing the processing plant. It will be ready in August next year. But when we were looking for financing, we talked to several multilaterals, and it worked out with FMO, the Dutch Development Bank. And when they came for the due diligence, they were like, "Hey guys, you guys are very sustainable. Why don't you communicate it? Why don't you tell us your story?" And that sort of really triggered it, right? To start seeing what we're doing from a different viewpoint. Like for example, what I mentioned before, right? We have a very efficient use of land. We have to communicate it. So that was one. Then dsm-firmenich came along with the Sustell platform that I'm sure you're interested in talking about as well. And then also came IDH. They invited us to their aquaculture working group. Right. So there are a lot of things happening, and we believe that really the next step, and this is actually resonates what Ivo, president of Animal Health and Nutrition at dsm-firmenich, said yesterday. He said, perhaps you're doing something right, but you have to make the invisible visible, right? If you are not measuring it, then you don't know. And we are very curious to see what our footprint is, a footprint that we believe is really low. And as soon as we have that number, we want to set a strict goal, right, to lower it even further.
And it occurs to me, though, that before we get on to talking about Sustell, that finance, from what you've said, could be in the future, as Ivo said yesterday, connected to sustainability. The finance investment might in future be more connected to your sustainability status or your global impact status. Is that what you see happening?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's very important, and I know that there is quite a movement around the world, ESG investing, etc. I hope that grows further in Ecuador, and for sure, as Almar, we see there is a huge opportunity.
And coming back then to Sustell, this is a dsm-firmenich product. Independent of them, it's an independent platform, and it's being used by both farmers, your company, but also by feed manufacturers as well. Can you tell me the benefits it brings to a company like yours?
Yeah, so sort of to begin with, we signed a collaborative agreement to, I wouldn't use the word develop because the platform is already developed, but it's more to adjust the platform to shrimp. We are the first shrimp producer to get going with Sustell. Sustell has quite a history in the salmon industry, for example. Now, what we see as an advantage from the tool is that, first of all, it's a tool, right? It's not going to be manual. Second of all, that it will help us organize all our data. And we have great relationships with some feed manufacturers, and we are hoping that working together with them, we can also understand what is the contribution of the footprint of the feed in our operations, right? But then, and most important, is to be able to make scenarios, make decisions. I remember when we were speaking with the Sustell team, with Dave Nickel, for example, we always were saying, this is beyond measurement, this is management, right? You can even play around with the scenarios and say, hey, if I use this feed or if I electrify this sector, this is going to be the impact. And if I don't do it, this is going to be the impact, right? So hopefully, this is a journey. This is not something that you will be done tomorrow. It's quite a journey, but hopefully we will be able to embed that in our operations decisions.
Yeah. And do you see Sustell being adopted by other companies in Ecuador? Is it important that they also take on the concept of Sustell?
I think so. I mean, generally, and I wouldn't say just Ecuador, right? I think this could be anywhere in the world. I think so. I think we are a very early adopter. We will work together with dsm-firmenich to adjust the platform. I'm sure it's going to work, but I'm sure that once it works, I think other companies will jump in the bandwagon, and I think that's important because, sometimes when you are leading an industry, I think it's also important to lead with example, and this is a good thing. It's a good thing to measure whether we are sustainable or not, or how sustainable we are for that matter.
Well, that's what you mentioned. It's not just a measuring tool; it's a management tool. And when it comes to management, it allows the industry to be comparative to each other. That it's not just focused on one company. Exactly.
That's absolutely right. For example, I was, as I mentioned before, in the IDH working group. That was last Monday, September 4th, if I'm not mistaken. They had measured the GHG emissions per kilo of protein of several shrimp farms. A few days later, the manager of sustainability of BioMar presented in the Global Shrimp Forum, and she had measured the footprint of shrimp producers in Ecuador, which was, by the way, quite lower than what I had seen before that included all farmers in the world, right? So it's important to measure it. And then based on that measurement, you can start thinking about KPIs and making decisions, etc.
Very exciting. When could we have an update from you next on how Sustell is making an impact? In 1 year, do you think, or do you think there's a time frame at all?
This is a very good question, and I was just speaking about this with some of the dsm-firmenich team. We want to start working in the tool as soon as possible. Hopefully, we'll start even next week when dsm-firmenich is over with the Aqua Days, which, by the way, has been a great conference. And the idea or the time frame that we sort of agreed together is to fully adapt the tool throughout this year, so that we should have a measure, perhaps not exact, not perfect, but in the first quarter of next year. So hopefully you can hear back from us then, and hopefully it's good news, but even better, it's not only that we have a number, but that we have an objective to improve that number, right?
Yeah. And we would be very happy to talk to you about that with the view of explaining to others how it's going, because I think it's a very important area that we begin to show the supermarkets, consumers, that we are becoming or aware of our sustainability degree and how we are improving it.
Absolutely. I think that's very important, and I think these efforts that, as I mentioned, we have been doing just because it's part of who we are, right? It's important that it gets contagious to the entire value chain, because shrimp has historically been sold as a commodity, but hey, it's a very nutritious protein, it is sustainable. Can retailers recognize that and push that to the consumers, or can consumers recognize that and pull that, right? And I think it's very important that it's recognized throughout the value chain.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Wolfgang. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and good luck with Sustell, but also with all the other developments that you're carrying out there at the company. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.